Have you ever watched a person walk into a chaotic room and without uttering a single syllable, cause the noise to die down? They don't shout to get attention. They don't wave their hands frantically. They simply exist, and the entire atmosphere shifts around them. This isn't magic. It is an ancient biological language that your human brain is hardwired to obey. While the amateur tries to prove their worth by being the loudest, most frantic voice in the room, the master understands a fundamental truth. True power is static. It is projected, not spoken. Thousands of years ago, the Stoic philosophers of ancient Greece and Rome mastered this exact silent command. They did not view power as the ability to manipulate others, but rather as the absolute mastery of oneself. They called it the mastery of the Hegemonikon, the ruling center of the soul. When your internal world is an unshakable fortress, your external presence becomes an irresistible gravitational force. Today, we are going to dissect the invisible signals that separate the leaders from the followers. We will code this unspoken language of influence, filtering modern evolutionary psychology through the timeless lens of ancient Stoicism. By the end of this journey, you won't just understand this quiet power. You will possess the blueprint to wield it. Let's decode the unspoken. The first and perhaps most terrifying tool in the arsenal of the powerful is the weaponization of silence. Most people are absolutely terrified of the void. In a modern conversation, when a pause stretches past 4 seconds, the average person feels a literal spike of cortisol, a chemical stress reaction in the brain. To escape this creeping discomfort, they rush to fill that silence with nervous chatter, over-explaining, and rambling. By doing so, they effectively hand over their power just to alleviate their own anxiety. The Stoic, however, operates differently. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, famously observed, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, therefore we should listen twice as much as we speak." The powerful person treats silence not as an empty void to be frantically filled, but as a masterpiece, a canvas to be admired. Consider the story of a young Steve Jobs during a heated negotiation with a supplier who was attempting to price gouge Apple. The supplier rambled on about rising costs, overheads, and tight margins, talking faster and faster to justify his numbers. Jobs didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He simply looked at the man, unblinking, and said absolutely nothing. He let the silence stretch for 10 agonizing seconds. The supplier, crumbling under the immense weight of the quiet, broke first. "Okay, maybe we can drop the price by 10%, he stuttered. Jobs hadn't said a single word. He simply let the other man bid against himself. As the philosopher Lao Tzu wrote, "He who knows does not speak. He who speaks does not know." When you are perfectly comfortable in the silence, you signal to the room that you are not seeking external validation. You signal that you are the predator, not the prey. In evolutionary psychology, the prey animal is skittish, constantly making noise to alert the herd and ensure its own safety. The predator is silent until it strikes. To command a room, you must become comfortable with the uncomfortable pause. The next time someone asks you a difficult or provocative question, take a beat, breathe, look at them. Let the silence build the tension. By the time you finally open your mouth to speak, the value of your words will have tripled, simply because you made the room wait for them. If silence is the canvas, your eyes are the brush. Most people fundamentally misunderstand eye contact. They think it is about aggressively staring someone down, a tactic which actually triggers an aggressive response rather than submission. True power lies in what psychologists call the visual dominance ratio. A high-status individual looks at others steadily while speaking, and crucially, while listening. But here is the ultimate key to their presence. They do not break eye contact when the pressure rises. There is a famous Hollywood story about the legendary actor Michael Caine. When he was a young, struggling actor, a seasoned director pulled him aside and said, "Michael, the reason you don't look powerful on screen is that you blink too much." The director explained that if you want to appear dangerous, intelligent, or uniquely authoritative, you must stop blinking frantically. Caine took this lesson to heart. He practiced staring without blinking for minutes at a time in front of a mirror. He later revealed his secret to the world. If you want to captivate someone, look at one eye, then the other, but never look away. It creates an intensity that is almost hypnotic. When you enter a room, scan it deliberately. Do not dart your eyes around like a panicking surveillance camera. Darting eyes signal a state of constant threat detection, which fundamentally implies fear. Instead, move your eyes slowly. Lock on to people. As the Roman orator Cicero noted, the face is a picture of the mind, with the eyes as its interpreter. If your eyes are darting, your mind is chaotic. If your eyes are still, your mind is a fortress. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, taught that a man must observe the world without being perturbed by it. When you are speaking to someone, imagine your eyes are physically holding them in place. If you look away, the moment you are challenged or questioned, you signal submission. If you hold the gaze calmly, you signal that you are entirely comfortable with conflict. It is a subtle, silent dance, but one that screams unbreakable confidence without a single word being spoken. Let us move to the geometry of power, space. In the animal kingdom, size directly equals status. A silverback gorilla puffs out its chest. A peacock spreads its magnificent feathers. Humans are no different, but in our modern, polite society, we have forgotten how to use our physical geometry. Low-status individuals habitually condense themselves. They cross their legs tightly. They hunch their shoulders to guard their necks, and they keep their elbows tucked tightly into their ribs. They are subconsciously trying to make themselves smaller, to avoid being perceived as a threat, to avoid being a target. Powerful people, conversely, claim territory. There is perhaps no better example of this in modern history than American President Lyndon B. Johnson. He was famous for something his aides terrifiedly called the Johnson treatment. OBJ was a tall man, and he utilized every single inch of his height. When he wanted to persuade a stubborn senator, he wouldn't just stand near them. He would actively invade their personal space, leaning in close, towering over them, placing a heavy hand on their shoulder. He made his physical presence utterly unavoidable. He expanded his territory until his space completely consumed theirs. You do not need to be physically aggressive like Johnson, but you must be expansive. As Sun Tzu wrote in The Art of War, the expert in battle seeks his own advantage from the ground. Your ground is your own body. When you sit at a boardroom table, spread your papers out. Put your phone down a foot away from you. Place your arm comfortably on the empty chair next to you. Open your chest. Psychologists often call this the antefetal position. By exposing your torso and your vital organs, you are sending a primal biological signal to every brain in the room. I am not afraid of being attacked here. This physical vulnerability is actually the ultimate display of psychological strength. The moment you shrink, the room shrinks you. The moment you expand, the room instinctively makes space for you. Haste is the ultimate enemy of authority. We have all seen the nervous intern running through the hallway, dropping papers, completely breathless and reactive. Now contrast that frantic energy with the CEO or the head surgeon. They move with a deliberate, almost agonizing slowness. Why? Because kings do not run. In the subconscious hierarchy of any human group, the person who moves the fastest is merely reacting to the world. The person who moves the slowest expects the world to wait for them. There is a legendary story from the samurai traditions of feudal Japan regarding the concept of furdushin, or the immovable mind. A young warrior frantically asked his master how to defeat an opponent who is naturally faster than him. The master replied, "Do not try to be faster, be slower. When you rush, you die. When you wait, you see." This ancient martial principle applies to the modern boardroom as much as it did to the battlefield. When you reach for a glass of water, do it slowly. When you turn your head to answer a provocative question, do not snap your neck like a startled animal. Turn your whole body methodically. This slow movement creates a tangible gravity around you. It literally forces other people to downregulate their own nervous systems to match your pacing. Think of the iconic character Don Corleone in The Godfather. He never moves quickly. He never fidgets. His slowness makes everyone else lean in, desperate to catch his rhythm. As the proverb goes, nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. When you radically slow down your physical movements, you signal that you are in control of time itself. You are not a slave to the clock. This creates an aura of immense competence, making people trust the person who looks like they have all the time in the world, even in the middle of a crisis. If slowness is the currency of time, stillness is the ultimate currency of discipline. Most people constantly leak their anxiety through micro movements, frantic foot tapping, relentless pen clicking, hair twirling, or nervously shifting weight from one leg to the other. These are pacifying behaviors, subconscious attempts to soothe the chaotic mind. In the language of the FBI, these are known as tells. They tell the entire room that you are profoundly uncomfortable. And if you are uncomfortable, you cannot possibly be the leader. A truly powerful person possesses the rare ability to sit in absolute stillness. Consider a statue. Why do we instinctively look up to marble statues of great historical leaders? Because they are frozen, eternal, and unshakable. There is a modern legend about a high-stakes poker player who wore dark sunglasses and a thick scarf, not to hide his eyes, but to hide his carotid artery. He knew that when he bluffed, the racing pulse in his neck would visibly throb. He understood that his biological body was betraying his mind. To control a room, you must ruthlessly plug these leaks. Ralph Waldo Emerson once famously said, "What you are speaks so loud, I cannot hear what you say." If your mouth is saying, "I am confident," but your foot is tapping a hole in the floor, the room will universally believe your foot. Practice the zero fidget rule. When you sit in a meeting, plant your feet entirely flat on the floor. Rest your hands comfortably on the table or your lap, and simply do not move them until you have a specific, deliberate reason to. This kind of absolute stillness is incredibly rare in our hyperactive, overstimulated world. It makes you look like a monolith. It draws massive attention simply because it is unnatural. It is a predator stillness. By eliminating the chaotic background noise of your body language, you force people to focus entirely on your presence. There is a well-documented psychological concept known as emotional contagion. It states that in any group dynamic, the person with the strongest, most stable emotion will eventually infect everyone else. Most people operate as thermometers. They merely reflect the temperature of the room. If the room is chaotic, they become anxious. If the room is sad, they become somber. The powerful person, the true Stoic, is the thermostat. They set the temperature, and they patiently wait for the room to adjust to them. Let's look at the incredible true story of Captain Sully Sullenberger, the pilot who miraculously landed a commercial plane on the freezing Hudson River. Listening to the actual black box recording of that flight is chilling. The engines had completely failed. The plane was literally falling out of the sky. The air traffic controllers on the ground were audibly panicking. Yet Sully's voice remained incredibly flat, calm, and monotone. "We're gonna be in the Hudson," he stated simply. He didn't scream, because he remained absolutely calm. His co-pilot remained calm. Because the crew was calm, the passengers didn't riot in the cabin. His nonverbal, stoic regulation of fear saved exactly 155 lives that day. As the great Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote, "To bear trials with a calm mind robs misfortune of its strength and burden." When you walk into a tense room, perhaps a heated family argument or a devastating business crisis, do not match their frantic energy. Drop your shoulders, breathe deeply through your nose, and consciously relax your facial muscles. If you maintain a state of relaxed, almost amused curiosity while everyone else is panicking, their brains will subconsciously look to you as the leader. You become the unshakable anchor in the storm. The person who is least reactive always holds the most power. We must also briefly discuss the most primal sense of all, touch. This is a highly dangerous tool, but when used correctly and ethically, it establishes an immediate psychological hierarchy. In almost every human culture, the person who initiates the touch is inherently the person with the higher status. Think about it logically. A boss pats an employee on the back, not the other way around. A teacher physically guides a student. The guiding touch is an incredibly subtle way to direct the entire room without using words. There is a classic psychological study where waitresses were instructed to briefly, gently touch a customer on the shoulder or hand when returning their change. The result? Their tips increased by a massive percentage. The physical touch created a momentary primal bond, a subconscious feeling of being taken care of. But in a power dynamic, it goes much deeper. It signals, "I am dominant and comfortable enough to enter your personal sphere." However, a vital warning, this requires extremely high emotional intelligence to execute. As the poet Margaret Atwood beautifully wrote, "Touch comes before sight, before speech. It is the first language and the last, and it always tells the truth." If you touch nervously, it feels creepy and violating. If you touch with authority, a firm handshake with the other hand gently cupping the elbow, or a subtle guide on the upper back to usher someone through a door, you are subconsciously positioning yourself as the shepherd. You become the one directing the movement of bodies in physical space. Used very sparingly, a well-placed firm touch on the shoulder during a greeting can instantly bypass someone's psychological defenses and establish you as the dominant yet benevolent force in the interaction. Finally, understand this. All the tricks in the world, the intense eye contact, the expansive posture, the strategic silence, will utterly fail if they are not backed by an authentic, internal aura of certainty. Humans are incredibly intuitive creatures. We can smell a fake from a mile away. Real, terrifying nonverbal power comes from an unshakable, deeply rooted belief that you have a fundamental right to be exactly where you are. This is not arrogance. Arrogance is incredibly loud and deeply insecure. This is Stoic conviction. It is the vast difference between a true king and a jester desperately wearing a stolen crown. Think of the late Queen Elizabeth II. She was a physically small woman, very often surrounded by massive men, towering generals, and aggressive world leaders. Yet, she never looked small. She carried an absolute internal certainty of her role. She didn't need to shout to prove she was the queen. She simply was. This profound internal state projected outward, creating a literal reality distortion field where everyone else naturally fell into line. The Stoic Epictetus taught that we must meticulously separate what is in our control from what is not. You cannot control whether the room likes you, but you possess absolute control over your own Hegemonikon, your ruling mind. The motivational speaker Earl Nightingale once said, "We become what we think about." If you walk into a high-stakes room, desperately thinking, "I hope they like me," your body will inevitably project weakness and submission. If you walk in thinking, "I am here to solve a problem, and I am not easily moved," your body will project massive utility and undeniable power. Before you enter that room, visualize your Stoic success. Feel the heavy weight of your own value. When you truly deeply believe you are the prize, you won't ever need to act. Your micro-expressions, your tone of voice, and your physical posture will align automatically. The ultimate control in this life doesn't come from manipulating others. It comes from the absolute, unwavering mastery of yourself. Power is not always a war. Sometimes it is a lingering look. Sometimes it is a heavy pause. And often, it is simply the Stoic refusal to be moved by the chaos swirling around you. By mastering these silent biological signals, you completely change how the world perceives you. But more importantly, you change how you perceive yourself. Which of these nonverbal tools of the Stoic master are you going to try first? The strategic, weaponized silence? The unwavering, unblinking gaze? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, the world is absolutely full of frantic noise. Be the silence that commands it. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the psychology of power.